Went all right.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Pod Talks with myself, Richie Bra, and Julia Kobryn.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, I
Good.
guess. Really happy to be
Yeah,
chatting to you again.
I know, right? So Julia and I are making this like a regular thing now. So we'll try and jump in and do a couple of these pod talks together. I just think it's so important to get to coaches for one of listening, basically. It's always good to get to perspective on different topics. So today's topics is all about why we should be tracking our progress and why it matters. Why do we need to jump in
Ah,
for the uni. It's been a long day.
progress. Yeah. Do you know what? I want to start by saying, because sometimes it might get confusing what really we mean by progress
Mm.
tracking. And there is a few things that we can actually track. I don't know if it's straightforward. Obviously, when it refers to fitness, we can progress food, what we eat, and how this supports our goals or possibly, hopefully, aligns with our goals, and also progress and track what we do in the gym, but maybe a little bit less obvious, also progress and track our moods and certain patterns of behaviors. So it's a bit of a diary logs. How do you feel about that last bit, especially because food and working out and our training is rather two obvious bits, but what about moods and behavior patterns?
Yeah, I
Do you
think
do
it's
that
really,
with your
yes. I
clients?
would say yes. And the way that we do it in the format that we do it is we do a reflective process weekly. So we'll track moods and wins and challenges and struggles and how various different questions basically to try and really get you digging in deep and really learning and understanding how we can move forward and how we can progress forward as well. And actually I think rather than making it just a reflective process in time, I think it's also important to understand that this is going to be something that you can also refer back to later on in the future. So if you think about joining a fitness or nutrition online lifestyle coaching program, quite often you might be a different type of individual when you start, but as you progress through,
I love that.
you'll start to see that you've changed. And so I think that's a really important thing to see is it's not always like week on week. It's looking at the bigger picture and how's this affected someone over, the 6 months or the year or however long we've been working together.
Yeah, I love that you said that we start and our clients start completely different people compared to how they come out. And that leads me to think that a massive part of it is self-awareness and raising self-awareness when it comes, yes, to behaviors, but also to how we respond to things, how we celebrate successes and what success means to us. So it's like a deeper understanding of yourself as a person, and building certain patterns and reactions to certain situations that probably will once overwhelm us. And we learn how to respond in a manner that will still serve us. So, why do you think it's so hard? But I am deliberately daring you to answer. What would you say is the number one reason why, for you and as a coach, progress tracking is so important?
Okay,
So
so
many.
there are so many different areas, obviously. So ideally, yes, we're looking at metrics for nutrition and training, and these are great because we can see how adherent somebody is being to their training program and their nutrition plan as well, and understanding how they're operating over the course of the weeks, the days, or whatever, right? But in terms of a reflective process as well, it's good for me to understand what sort of things have happened or occurred over the week. So there'll be reasons why, progress hasn't been made or we've not seen things one week or the other. And one of the things may be our menstrual cycle. It will affect all of us very uniquely at different periods and stuff. We will do you know what? Like sometimes some periods are like normal and some are like horrendous.
I
Myself, so
wanted to say it's not even monthly, but it can be different every single month, right?
exactly. But another thing that we haven't touched on is the tracking and the progress tracking of metrics. So body metrics,
Yeah.
like that's one way that we know that somebody is succeeding. And, I think that's a really good overview to kind of take a step back and have a look at, because you'll look at how that has changed when you zoom out and when we've
Yeah.
weeks and months of progress to compare and to have a look at, as opposed to this sort of week on week, because it's very easy to get blindsided from one week to the other and bounce and bounce and bounce. But actually, it's so important to build a picture. It's not just that we ask clients to, we're not looking to see that you've made progress and that's it. Like, oh my God, you've done better than last week. It's not always going to be like that.
Not at all. And I think that's the most obvious reason why I see progress tracking so important, just to read the metrics and to have, like, they underpin the structure of the program and the approach that I'm going to take with my clients. So it's also a good self-reflection for my client to see what actually works and to appreciate what milestones they achieved. So this is like reading metrics is really important. Sometimes I get this from my new clients that they are a little bit resistant, like especially to food tracking, thinking this is more for me being a teacher, trying to catch them on something. But do you in time, 1, 2, 3 weeks in, and they start understanding how much value they themselves get from it. So reading what's been done and analyzing weeks makes them more committed and more aware. Also, like this self accountability all of a sudden happens, and they understand I'm not there to catch them, but as well to see certain patterns and make them aware. I'd rather be called a leader, in this process than a teacher, and they become teachers to themselves. Do you get that as well? That sometimes people are very resistant, like, why do I need to track? I eat clean, I eat healthy. Whereas certain things come up more when they are black and white, written down, and ready to be analyzed. So it's a nice overview, like you said, mapping out from being in the center of the process, because we obviously lose this objectivity while we go further in. Yeah. So I think
100%.
that that's what you kind of were referring to. And another point, if I may continue on this, is that people you were mentioning, like to understand how progress works, and it's not necessarily always going to be linear every week in, week out. And it is so important to see the progression at least going in within one tendency. It will be dropping down sometimes, strength goes down, yeah, like you said, especially for us women due to menstrual cycle, but also the level of stress or quality of sleep and different tendencies. As long as it goes down, up, but have a tendency going upwards, comparing month before or 2 months before, people start appreciating those metrics.
Yes. And I think it goes a long way when it comes to creating consistency as well, because I know that that could be one of the biggest things that when people they apply to be coached by me, they join my program, they lack consistency and motivation. They'll start something and they'll go all guns blazing, and then all of a sudden it drops off. And we know that they're lacking the accountability and having that support system as they journey through those sticky points. But I think it's also really important that when you are tracking progress, that it's helping you align with creating consistency. That
Consistency and commitment, right? Because
yeah,
if you have some clearly structured goals and you see you're actually getting little steps, which really are not that little, it creates that commitment. And that again refers to self accountability. Totally.
yeah, definitely. Another thing that I think is often overlooked is the importance of, look, if you are on a program and your goals are related to getting toned, building muscle, dropping body fat, losing weight, any of those things, the scales can lie, right? Scales can really play havoc. And I feel like there's, I don't know if it's just something that's always been out there as like women to just focus on scale weight. Like it's a very important metric, but when I'm looking for metrics, I'm not looking just for weight scale. Like that's not what we're looking at all the time. It's a very valuable tool, but it is not the only thing. And this is why I think it's so important to like measure body parts and actually take pictures, because a lot of the time women will tell me, I don't see any difference. I look the same. And it's like, well, how do we know? Because we haven't seen this fully documented journey, and we need to see the pictures week on week, because where you may not see the changes, your coach certainly can. And again, even when it comes to things like certain times of the month, or even like foods that have triggered this as well, or lifestyle that's triggered it, like the bloating that you may see or whatever, again, you might just go, well, I've not changed because I'm like really bloated. But it's like, well, actually, if we have a look at how you were prior, maybe your bloatedness is not as extreme as it was when you first joined the program. Maybe actually that's reduced, and actually maybe although you're having a little flare up, we know that your waist has come in a little bit, or your biceps are a bit fuller, or maybe we can even see, and it sounds crazy, we could see the little lines on the back of your arm, or even in on your back itself, like around the way that the things are shaped, the muscles are shaped around your scapula, your bra strap area, like any of those bits you cannot see, but we can see. And that's why it's really important that when you are taking photographs, they're in the same place, the same time of day, ideally
Lighting,
the same
yeah.
type of lighting, ideally the same type of clothing, be it you want to be
I'm
in
so
underwear and
happy
clothes.
you mentioned the scale. I'm so happy because that's one of the metrics that I definitely ask people to incorporate in progress tracking. So, how I do, probably you do similar
Yeah.
um, points of measure. Measuring certain body parts, pictures, like you've already mentioned, scale. But obviously, this is going by the aesthetics. But sometimes, indeed, I mean, or very often, shall I say, scales is a bit. People get fixated on the numbers on the scale. And very often, my clients want to tone up and lose body fat. And that doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with week in and week out losing kilograms or grams, but some people expect still kilograms to be falling week in and week out. Um, and just on the contrary, while we build muscle, which takes less volume than fat, we might be losing fat at the same time, and the scale might not be moving much. And therefore, those measurements are crucial to keep us going. Also, and like you said, apart from menstrual cycles, there is certain types of foods like carbs that hold more water. So, what did you eat before, like at the night? Alcohol, stress, sleep, all these things make us hold us to
Drinking a bit
water.
more water.
Exactly. So there are so many variables that matter, but also so many ways of tracking progress. So we're talking now particularly about the aesthetics, which is very important. And let's be honest, most people join for the aesthetical reasons. And I love when my clients turn into, I want to be stronger now. Oh, I'm happy. I want to do a pull up. Oh, I want to do 100 deadlift. Oh, I want to do, I don't know, squat jumps with no knee pain. Whatever that is, the goals change once you start seeing the metrics and you fall in love. And those metrics at the beginning, as simple as aesthetics, are a nice kickstart. But it turns out too often, I would say 9 out of 10, that people fall in the process. And also, it gives you fun to set the goals. They're measuring your progress, because obviously, apart from the aesthetics, we measure performance. How to measure performance without tracking your workouts. And that gives the excitement, and more fun to the process, right? And keeps you kind of consistent, which we mentioned, but also it gives you the drive to go back and like look at your previous numbers from last week. Sometimes they don't change the following week, But then if you compare it, what happens in 2, 3 weeks, and again, you analyze with other measures, like what food did I eat? How was my sleep? Okay, that's why last week possibly was a little bit weaker. But this week, I'm like 10, 15% lifting more than last week. So this is the beauty of the process. It's not being crazy, a weirdo, keeping the track of it, but it's just being so mindful and intentional in your journey.
I
So
think
important.
so. Yeah, I think so. And I love everything that you've mentioned there as well. So again, it's just removing fear and replacing that with understanding what focus should be in terms of creating long-term progress. We shouldn't be looking at things daily and short term and weekly, although we track those things. But when we zoom out and we go, okay, that's what's happened. It's creating that mindset shift around it, and it does take time, because I think that can be the trouble when people think that things are time constraint as well, that I must do X amount in 8 weeks or 12 weeks, it's going to happen. And it's like, well, no, you should be in this for life, but we should be seeing this transient sort of flow, really like working with it as we age and as we continue on through the seasons of the year and everything. Because I think, again, even taking it back to aesthetics, there needs to be time away from it as well. And I think when you start taking time focus away from some of these things, especially when you are a beginner and maybe you've been on a program for a little while, actually pulling away from it and going, right, you know what, let's spend a bit of time having a look at your strength goals, having a look at other things that we can start to progress and manipulate as well. So yeah, I think it's endless in that sense. So
Yeah,
there's so
and
many things to look at.
what you said, it prevents the burnout
Yeah,
when you are fixated about the aesthetics goal. There is as much as you can achieve in a certain period of time, and then another thing that strips you out of happiness and satisfaction with your own progress is comparing yourself to others.
yeah,
I cannot highlight enough how different our physiques are. And what we see on the internet, unfortunately, sometimes is toxic and is blurred by all sorts of filters. So the only person that I always talk to my clients, you want to compete against, but why compete? It's just become better than is yourself. So that switch of the goals from the aesthetic to performance definitely helped most of my clients prevent the burnout and kind of feeling not good enough. As well, why are we chasing things? It's like, I was mentioning you didn't want to butt in, but I was like, oh, itchy inside to get and to butt in, because it's so important. Fitness should be for life. Like, there is no end goal to fitness, and you have to find way to fall in love with it. It's great if you have that first incentive of, I want to lose 5 kilos of my belly, or I want to get bigger butt, whatever that is. But eventually you'll start feeling that that can't be the only thing. There can't be why people are in fitness 10, 20, 30 years and maintain. And those goals are so irrelevant with age. The older we get, don't you think? We're quite
100%.
similar age.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I would definitely agree with that. I mean, even when it comes to like strength goals as well, they've changed.
totally.
There was a time in my life where I was driven by going, I've got to be able to deadlift X and hip thrust X and squat X, and I need to be able to, do, whatever silly stats you see online, that you've got to be able to do double your weight in this lift, or you
Hmm.
must be able to achieve 1.75 of this, as a marker of fitness, or what have you. But actually, as you get older, it changes. And when you take it back to how we educated ourselves and the training that we've done, that when it comes to fitness, there are so many interpretations or levels of it, right? Fitness is not just these days, social media, it's not just the way you look, it's not just strength, it's not just being able to run loads or do pull-ups or any of those things. Fitness is so many other things, and there are other components of it. Like even thinking about things as stupid as like flexibility, balance,
Mhm.
mobility. These are all components of physical fitness.
You know what I'd add?
Yeah.
Looking at it so holistically, mental health. I
Yeah.
cannot see being fit without being at peace, a person at peace in harmony. And I always say to the clients, but I also sometimes remind myself, it's not how you look, but how you feel in your body. And your best weight and best look is the one that you feel most comfortable at and you can sustain. Leading a role of a mother, of wife, of a friend, having social life. Of course, when we compare ourselves with the top stats of athletes or people that sacrifice their lives into fitness, I always wonder how happy these people are. And
Yeah.
also, it's a short term life of those pro athletes. And no one talks about injuries and being unable to do certain things, like you said, mobility, right? Scratching the back or something like that. But how many twinges and pains they might experience after years of professional athleticism, but how great they look. Like it's not all about it. So I think we're on the same page with what fitness is. It's
Yeah.
holistically being a person that can do things that without restrictions and is happy in the body. But again, comparison, like because where I was sometimes I pause and think, where is this massive drive to look a certain way is coming from? It's social media.
Yeah.
It's that accessibility to perfection that is presented like perfection, but it's not really perfection because we're skipping and taking away the mind from what we see in the picture or in the video.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like
Very philosophical, I know.
there's so no, but there's so much to this as well. And I think just engaging in doing something that is good for you and having time for you will help change you mentally as well. It helps create that, again, like you say, that change in mindset, that change in respect and understanding for your body as well. So, and knowing what you are able to achieve through it. And I feel like there was another area that I wanted to kind of like touch on as well with this.
Go
Um,
on.
oh gosh. But yeah, when it comes to like things like the injury and the, thinking about goals and what can I achieve and what next and what next. I feel like there's stages or seasons as well with going to the gym and tracking a certain way. Um, it's trying to I've lost my train of thought, but there was definitely something that was I was hanging on to, and it was just, yeah.
Maybe maybe one more from me because
Yeah.
I think we've covered quite a lot. Um, all in all, apart from the overall holistical approach to fitness, obviously, I still stand by tracking your progress, especially when you're a beginner. Um, that doesn't mean that is strict to of the fun part of it, and sometimes actually that's the part that is fun. Um, and goal setting is so important still, regardless of how they change and how seasonal they may be. Sometimes you need to step back, obviously, just to enjoy maybe other activities. But in general, that's what kept me in fitness, well, nearly all my life, in all sorts of form or shape. But I always had some sort of progress tracking methods that were keeping me committed to things seasonally, as you say. And they differ at different times and also different stages of my age. So I would like to end on this note from me, like as because I think we've really saturated that reasons why it's so important, but especially for beginners, if I can highlight it one more time, it's very important to create the self-awareness and keep consistent.
Yeah,
Did it
definitely.
come back to you what you wanted to
Yeah.
say?
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know where it went, but again, I'd say again with like tracking, progress and things. I think when it comes down to it, and staying in fitness and staying motivated and consistent and committed to your health, to your fitness, to your life goals, goal setting is key. And then when we think about goals, you got to think about how do you know that you achieve those, and then we need to think about like tracking methods. And then again, we need to think about how we're progressing. So there are various different ways of obviously tracking that, but it's just coming back to that it's all, you know, the goal setting, the staying committed, the tracking, the seeing the progress is just
Success
helpful.
is all
It helps.
part.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yay. Julia drew a heart there for me, I think, or a circle of the world, or a box.
Sure.
Yeah. So this was a brilliant topic for us to kind of like talk about again, and just, you know, thinking about you know, having this conversation about progress and tracking. But we will be back again soon. And yeah, you can find us on Instagram, social media, where we share the good stuff. Julia Kobryn and Bra. And we'll be back very soon for another episode of Pod Talks.